Hi handsome, welcome to my 49th video. Over the last couple of days, there has been an increasing sentiment around the negative impact AFK activities in BDO have on the game as a whole. And while it is perhaps easy to handwave that away as nothing but another doom post with the usual suspects, I thought I would also give my 2 cents on the matter because once again, the narrative being pushed is not entirely truthful. This video has been in large part inspired by Blue Squadron's video on the same topic, and although I will touch on some of the same talking points, I won't call this a reaction or even a response. You guys are free to go and watch Blue's original video and make up your own opinions as well. Before we begin, we need to make one thing painfully obvious. AFK activities have been in the game since release, and their profitability has been fluctuating ever since. So for those of you who believe that AFK activities are killing the game, or that they are something that will lead to its downfall by its sheer existence, that downfall has been happening for, give or take, the last 11 years, so I think that we will be fine for the time being. But I would say that that's not the majority of you. The current argument against AFK activities is the claim that AFK activities, particularly AFK fishing at the moment, is making people play the game less. The claim then goes that because AFK fishing is quote-unquote too good, people feel like they are wasting their time grinding. Some of the more veteran players in the audience might think that this line of thinking has also always existed in the community and that AFK activities being too good is nothing new in the game and the surrounding discords, whether that be fishing, horses, cooking, or even my personal pet peeve, workers. But before we can get into all of that, I believe that we should first talk about the way in which players play the game and the type of players that usually engage in AFK activities in BDO. I would generally split them into several categories along this spectrum that I made up that has the people playing out of fun and people playing more out of necessity. Obviously this is not going to include every single type of person in the game, but maybe just the larger groups, if you will. And don't worry guys, I am fully aware of just how much you love my quasi-scientific way of talking about things when it comes to BDO. We have two types of people we need to start with, since these are also important to what we are going to be talking about. You can call them honorable mentions or whatever, but these two groups do not AFK in the game basically at all. These are what I will call the social animal, the person who only plays with and because of their friends, and the penny pincher, who cannot afford or doesn't want to pay the increased electricity bill stemming from keeping his computer on all the time, or he's just generally worried about the health of his computer after not turning it off. Neither group will therefore be affected by the viability of AFK activities, but I think it would be disingenuous to talk about the AFK activities in BDO under the impression that everyone and their grandma does them and will always do them. Specimen 1. The role player. These players do their given AFK activities simply because they enjoy it or the fantasy associated with it. They don't really care about the silver per hour or what's meta or what is the best activity to do. They have their own goals most of the time, which is why I will also lump people whose goals are not directly tied to silver into this category, such as people who want to be number 1 on the Landsco leaderboard, people going for specific titles, Ironman accounts, and people with their own challenges. Specimen 2 is the busy bee. These are the dads with a job and 3 children at home who can't game all day long and are often happy to get a couple hours of grind a week done. AFK money making for them is a way to still be engaged with the game and the community, and also to have a feeling of progression and to not feel like everyone else is running away from them and they can still kind of keep up with the general player base. Specimen 3 is the craghead. In a way, these are the exact opposite of the busy bee. They have way too much free time on their hands and they have decided to spend the majority of that free time running in circles in BDO. These guys often AFK only because their heart has stopped after pumping nothing but caffeine and sugar the last 16 hours, and so AFK fishing is their last resort to still be able to play the game without going to the hospital. Kind of similar to the craghead, Specimen 4 is the min-maxer. Now, what differentiates him from the craghead is that he might not have as much free time to play the game, and that he is obsessed with efficiency and doesn't play the game just for the pure love of it, the way that the craghead might be. This guy will only grind when there is a drop rate event, he will only go to the best silver per hour spots for his class according to Garmov.com, half of his playtime will be spent reading and making spreadsheets for basically everything the game has to offer, and this guy is also, as a result, the first person who might play the game less if he feels like his time is being wasted, but it is important to say that not everyone will do this, as we will talk about, because the silver per hour of fishing is a little bit deceptive. Specimen 5 is the Tuvala team, and you already know this guy is completely clueless. He picked the game up on sale because he saw us Mongoloid play that one time and it looked like fun. He might evolve into one of the other specimen later on, or he might completely quit the game before graduating from seasoned servers. He does AFK activities because some random guy on YouTube told him that he is graving himself for not doing it, and he will abandon the AFK activity the moment a new guide comes out telling him the opposite. There also is the PvPer who could honestly go into any of the other categories, but I think it's important to mention anyway, because especially if it's open world PvP and large scale, these are the people who got hit by Pearlbase directly the most, and therefore they might have the most resentment because in their opinion the game has died since their content is not really as popular or in some cases non-existent, and they might carry this resentment to other parts of the game as well. But they still play the game because they are still, however much, hoping that it will get better one day and that Pearlbase will get their shit together, so to say, and fix what they want to fix. Finally, we have the burned out veteran. This is often the final evolution of the crackhead after they fall out of love with the game for whatever reason. This guy either quit the game 70 times in the last 2 years, or he plays the game out of spite because he has nothing better to do. There is nothing more infuriating to this player than other people having fun in the game. He will flood the forums and Reddit posts saying how the game was better back then and that X change killed the game. Often, these players develop a bit of a savior complex, where they believe it's them and only them who know what's good for the game, even if the changes proposed by them only really benefit themselves and their kin. Believe it or not, BDO is not even the only environment that houses this type of a specimen. If you have ever seen streamers play League of Legends, first of all, God rest your soul, and secondly, you can see that their eyes are empty. They hate the balance, the new champions, the meta, the company itself, and they are playing simply because they are addicted to the game and or because it is their source of income. Now, you might be wondering where the burned out veteran sits on the spectrum since I didn't show it to you yet. But I need to mention one thing to put it into context. Generally speaking, the lower the person is on the fun scale and the farther he is on the necessity scale, the higher the chance of them quitting the game. With that in mind, the burnout veteran sits somewhere around here. Yeah, they're kind of off the charts. This chart's actually great because it doubles down as an indicator to show why people quit the game. Generally speaking, the less fun something is, the less likely you are to engage in that thing. And the more something feels like a chore, the more likely you are to procrastinate on it, especially if you are not getting rewarded for it. Of course, people quit for countless other reasons, but I would say that most of the time, if a player quits, they quit because what I would call a product of circumstance, such as family duties, jobs, their friends quitting, or a different game coming out that interested them more, etc. Because of this, I believe that the decision to quit the game would have most likely happened no matter the quality of the game itself. What I am trying to say here is that AFK activities are not a source of people quitting in the majority of cases, but might serve rather well as an indicator of a player enjoying the game less. Did AFK activities not exist or were they not worth doing? The only difference we would see is that these people would simply not log into BDO at all, which is to an extent evidenced by the fact that before all the phishing changes happened in November, AFK activities were on the decline, in large part because they were seen as not worth doing at all and not even a little competitive with the active gameplay part of BDO, which is why people have decided that rather to keep their computer on all time to make like 200 million a night, they're just going to turn it off. I think another important thing to mention, because this is something that very rarely gets talked about when it comes to BDO and MMOs in general, is that video games at the end of the day are a form of entertainment. They are supposed to be fun. I believe this is why the most likely people to quit the game for reasons related to the game itself are the two groups of people that are having the least amount of fun playing it. Now, I do not personally find it a coincidence that these two groups are the ones talking negatively about the game the most often. Since I already mentioned it, I think it's also worth talking about the people spreading the idea around the most. For those of you who have seen my follow-up response video on Open World PvP, you might remember when I said this. When in a discussion or a debate, you need to look at who the person behind the argument is. And well, it was just as true then as it is today. What the recent outrage against AFK activities and AFK fishing especially today represents is often just another way for these same people to go "I told you so" when there is a slight dip in player numbers. Often these are the same people who told us that cronstones are the death of the game, that removing one-sided guild decks is going to kill BDO, that felt the most vindicated after the node war changes because there was a noticeable dip and the doom posting was at its peak, and who are now, once again, moving to yet another feature of the game they can dress up as the next thing that is going to cause BDO's downfall. Make no mistake, the idea that BDO is making systematic changes towards AFK gameplay that are incentivizing players to play the game less are complete bullshit and could be summarized with this meme.
That's a nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
But let's look into it a little bit more to see just how stupid of a claim this really is. The fishing update that brought us the new fish as well as the doubling of the prices of all existing fish except for harpoon fishing, RIP, happened on November 14th, 2024. This was a week after we got the two new grind spots in Land of the Morning Light, Honglin Base and Dokkaebi Forest. Both of these spots later got buffed multiple times, I might add, and while Dokkaebi is still slightly underwhelming in its silver per hour despite its popularity, Honglin Base is the best and the most popular mid-game spot in the game right now. On November 28th, we also got the DSR revamp, and since then we also got two new endgame grind spots, possibly 3 if you want to separate the two Pick Cave versions. We also got Calamity and Sangoon and Pick King Boss Blitz, and we finally got the 4th dungeon. And this is without mentioning buffs to current content, the most recent of which happened literally last week as of me recording this, which buffed Tungrad Ruins and City of the Dead by allowing Embers of Resonance to drop there. Oh, and of course, Pearl Abyss just got done buffing almost all the classes in the game in their PvE performance on top of all of that, so even if you never went to any of the new or buffed spots, your class baseline strength is still higher, so you are still more likely to make more money no matter which spot you grind at. Life skills also got various buffs. Narcian hunting got a buff a week after the fishing update, which increased the number of stuffed furniture and breaths dropping from mobs in that zone. Alchemy got Imperial delivery buffs. Cooking got a tool reducing your cooking time, which now makes it possible to reach 1 second cook time with the canopy outfit, effectively doubling your cooking speed from before. Sea monster hunting got buffs, Karaks and their gear became sellable on the central market, buffing the profits of sea content and also making it easier to get into for the players who don't have a Karak yet, on top of plethora of other buffs and quality of life changes to bartering. Horses are getting buffed as we speak, farming got some admittedly minor changes to their seed RNG and their mole spawn rate, and of course all life skills got a new tier of accessories as well as the 3000 mastery cap. Really, the only two life skills that didn't get many touches, if any, are of course trading, I mean I don't need to say much more than that, and gathering, which only got indirect buffs through the new content around it and the increased demand for certain ingredients such as sap, blood and also sharps and black gems. Even PvP got buffed several times. AOS ranked season gave you more money than ever before. RBF got buffed with a new reward structure. Node Wars rewards were buffed, admittedly before the AFK fishing, but I still think that we should include it here. And of course, we cannot forget the hardcore server, which although PA completely botched the execution on it with the idea to only play 4 classes, was still giving you an insane amount of money for the time invested on top of having absolutely no gear requirements. there also is the potential of the new Demon Knight expansion on the way, which will hopefully give us more new content for all major parts of the game, but we already know that it is going to be primarily focused on open world PvP and possibly make PvP more profitable in that way as well. So just so we are on the same page, I'm going to reiterate what I just said. With the exception of Node Wars, all of the changes that I just mentioned, all of the new content and all of the buffs to existing content happened after or during the time when the fishing update happened. And yes, there were subsequent updates to fishing as well during this time too, but other than the fishing tournament, in my opinion, there was very little that would increase the actual amount of money that you do make from it. With all of that in mind, let's look into how much AFK fishing, which is what I think is the biggest problem for people nowadays, actually makes. AFK fishing will on average make you between 1 and 2 billion silver a day, depending on your fishing setup, mastery and the fishing spot itself. Now, if we take that per day average and divide it by 24 hours, we are now looking at anywhere between 40 and 80 million an hour. A single hour at any of the endgame spots will net you, at least according to Garmov, an average of anywhere between 2.5 and 3 billion an hour, and even mid-game spots will make you between 1 and 1.5 billion as well. Even bad gathering spots will get you at least $500 million an hour, with most of them in around the 1 billion mark, and hunting capable of several billion an hour as well. Which brings us to another problem I have with the narrative that AFK fishing or AFK activities are too good and that it discourages active playtime. People promoting this idea are comparing the incomparable. If you actually compare fishing and grinding on an hourly basis, you would soon realize that a single hour spent grinding would net you way more silver than fishing. I think this is clearly obvious. Of course, you cannot grind 24 hours a day, but it is in my opinion extremely dishonest to pretend like people are playing the game less because fishing is better or that grinding is not good enough, especially when every activity in the game is constantly getting updated. If the idea is that people are willingly replacing their would-be active playtime in BDO with AFK fishing, then the idea also has to be that there is a reason other than the money per hour that the fishing makes that would make people want to do such a thing, and most importantly, how fun the active gameplay part of the game actually is. And if this is the argument that people want to go with, that grinding or PvP or what have you is not as fun to them as it used to be, or perhaps that they cannot do it as well as they used to do, then it is completely valid in my opinion to then go and just AFK fish instead if you still feel like playing the game at all. Of course, if you run with the argument that BDO is not fun and that's why AFK fishing is on the rise nowadays, then you run into the problem that fun is deeply subjective and everyone has fun in their own way, and you cannot tell someone that they are not having fun, right? It is much easier to say that the developers are making bad decisions, or that they are out of touch, or that they are greedy, or any other reason that you might think. And therefore, it is easier to weaponize this type of thing as the reason that BDO is going to die, rather than I'm not having fun in the game anymore. This is not to say that BDO is a perfect game or that Pearl Abyss is doing a stellar job, but it is to say that the actual reasons for doing more AFK fishing in the game that do exist are something that is at least to some extent personal. Even if we use, in my opinion, a stronger argument as to why AFK fishing is on the rise, that being that there is a lack of new content in the game, particularly for life skills, and therefore a person may feel more drawn to AFK fishing out of boredom more than anything else, that boredom is still something that you cannot control, nor can you prescribe it to people as the reason why they are doing AFK fishing. The idea that the developers are out of touch or that the game is being ruined by a certain update or updates appears on the surface more objective, even if it is still just an opinion, and therefore requires you, the viewer, to argue against it with more than just a simple "but I'm having fun though." But let's return to the original argument and play the devil's advocate and say that active playtime should be buffed even more than what it already is. What happens if you increase the server per hour of the active playtime by, let's say, 50 or even more % is going to be a blatant case of inflation, which will lead to one of two outcomes. Either everything becomes more expensive to keep up with the rising silver per hour people are making, or the silver per hour people are making is going to outpace the rising cost of gear and other ingredients, and people will get their gear faster, which will lead to gear devaluing faster on the center market. Funnily enough, both of these can actually happen at the same time, like we can kind of see on NA already, where the gear is cheaper, mostly thanks to whales and outfit crowns being used more compared to other servers, but if you look at the materials and other things that you have to grind for, be it for life skills, PvP or PvE, all of those items are going to be more expensive and or harder to get than on the other servers. In either case, we return back to the original idea of BDO becoming less fun as a result, because no matter which way the central market ends up going in such a scenario, if people are progressing too fast, they end up with nothing left to do and they become bored and quit the game, and if they progress too slowly, they feel like their time is not getting valued and they quit as a result. So if you do a silver increase that is substantial enough, because if it's not substantial enough, then it's basically a placebo and nothing changes, you still end up with an exodus of players no matter what. Alright, so now that we know the type of player who engages in AFK activities, as well as the type of player who is outspoken against their inclusion or their viability, we should also talk a little bit about the reason why AFK activities are in the game in the first place, and why it's in Perlibis's best interest to incentivize people to do them. This time, it's very simple.
Hello, I like money.
AFK activities are actually quite a clever idea, since it allows you to play two games at once. Perlibis future-proofed their game with this feature, and we can see that in action even to this day. There is absolutely no way that an MMO in its now 11th service can compete in popularity with any game releasing today into the same market. And we can see the latest example of Perlibis leaning back on AFK fishing during the release of Throne and Liberty, when BDO got a fishing event. There probably is some psychology mumbo-jumbo player retention that nobody really cares about, where thanks to AFK fishing and the like, you are still thinking about BDO even when playing another game, something you wouldn't be really doing if AFK activities did not exist or were just not viable enough to the point where you'd consider keeping the game on. The end result is that since you are still in the game, Perlibis can still get money from you, whether that is the more generic stuff like value packs or the specific fishing items we see them putting into the Pearl shop lately, such as the Alter backpack and the grandpa fishing rods. And so when I hear things such as the devs are out of touch or the developers have no idea what they are doing, I think that it's kind of silly, because if you look at the business side of things, you will understand very quickly that what they are doing is very smart for their business, and all you need to do to see how true this statement that I have just made is to go to any of the fishing spots and count the number of otter fishing backpacks and realize that each and every one of them is $15 for Perlibis. With all of that being said, there's one question that I have been avoiding until now because I don't really know how to put it, and that is whether all of this really even matters. Ultimately, that decision is up to you, but here is what I think. AFK activities in BDO fulfill a specific role, and that is to keep people playing for longer than they would have otherwise. It is also a source of the feeling of progression divorced from all the grinding and PvPing and all the potential stress and time investment related to that. As a result, the people upset about this are, in my opinion, fighting windmills, and all the other parties are in a win-win situation where the players are either having more fun or more progression, and the company, of course, gets more money. For the final part of the video, I have decided to do something that I don't normally do. Since this video is in large part inspired by Blue Squadron, who was in turn inspired by Pansy, I have decided to inspect the original video from Pansy that started most of this discourse. Now, I did expect the video to be more on the negative side, But what I found in it really surprised me because it in large part corroborated what I have been saying here until now. Pansy is happy to just AFK fish in the game. He does what he enjoys, which is the fishing and some worker empire building, and he doesn't feel the need to grind, so this is the game's way of keeping him engaged. He is also a father with a job outside of BDO, so he probably doesn't have as much time to play even if he wanted to. And I think that we should also mention that he is someone who has quit the game before and came back to the game only to AFK fish instead. Where some of you might see apathy towards the game and playing it out of obligation, I see a person having fun with the game in his own way. And at the end of the day, that is what the game is all about, is it not? Last time I talked about a similar topic, I left you guys with a message. I won't repeat the same message, but will instead tell you something a little bit different. No matter what kind of activity you enjoy in the game, there is only one wrong way to play it. And it is the one where you are not having any fun. I mean this with utmost sincerity. If you are not having fun with BDO or any game for that matter, take a break. It doesn't matter if that break is 2 weeks, 2 months, or even 2 years. Eventually, I think that most people experience the itch to play BDO, and when that itch arrives, you might find the fun that you have lost along the way before. And if that itch never arrives, well, that's okay too. That's all I have for you today, handsome. Remember to like and subscribe, and enjoy your grind. Or maybe I should say, your AFK fishing.